You said Dan.
Dan, yes,
Dan is there with you.
I'm here.
Okay. So um, there's four of you sitting at the table. Lee, I see four heads. So why don't you guys introduce who you are, and then we'll get us after that. So
All right, well, I'll let Dan start. We'll raise our hands and introduce ourselves. Dan, new member on the Facilities Review Committee.
Yes.
Eric Nielsen, Deschutes County Capital Improvement Manager.
Yeah.
Coming Group, Owners Rep, Construction Manager.
And Lee Rand, Facilities Director.
Okay. Renee.
Renee Alexander, BBT Architects.
Mark.
Mark Nisha, committee member, retired superintendent.
And Will.
Will Turner, committee member.
Okay. I guess we've got everybody we're going to get this morning. So good morning, everyone. So I hope the committee members have had a chance to review the meeting minutes from last time. So do I hear a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
Motion to accept meeting minutes.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right, we've done that. Now, the courthouse expansion, Lee. And I've got one question before you start.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a permit?
We are processing the payment for the building permit, and we expect to have it next week. So we do not have the building permit at hand. We received the final fee calculations yesterday, and we'll be processing that. It's a large amount, so it's a little bit different process than other fees that we pay. So it's going to take us a few days.
Well, you got to sell some property in the county to pay for it?
No, there's just a little longer approval process over the next few days. Rather than a single day, it's probably a 3-day process.
Okay. So the new committee members know what's going on. In September of last year, the 100% of the construction documents for this project were submitted to the city for permit. September last year. So it's been 10 months waiting for a permit. And of course, there's been some back and forth, and there's been partial permits for demolition and for other things given, but the building permit is almost 10 months in process.
Yeah. And we'll touch on that in our update.
All right. That I'm obviously you guys, I'm not through with that, but Lee, go ahead. I'll let you guys do your thing now.
So I'll share my screen. We have about just 6 slides. We'll pause on one with the bulk of the update, and then I'll share some slides showing the current work, and then we'll talk about some current challenges and then expected milestones. So those are the 3 areas we'll hit on. I think we probably, just in terms of content, maybe have about a half hour, and then throughout, please feel free to ask any questions, raise any, or share any thoughts that you have. And as I mentioned, Deputy County Administrator Whitney Hale likely will join us a little bit after noon. And so just so everyone's aware.
So you guys, I can see what
Hopefully everyone's able to
it's not too far.
see this. All right, Wayne and Eric and I are here. I'm not gonna go through the full review that we did last time, but in short, here's the scope of the courthouse project. You can see the site there for review again, on the right. Focused on expanding space for the courts and administration, security screening, in custody holding and transport, and then it's 3 levels plus the basement and around 51,000 square feet. And there is the rendering of the view from Bond Street. So I'll move right into current status. I'm going to reduce that and see if I can go to some pictures here. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop sharing and share. So I'm just going to show a few slides of the right-of-way areas, then the site, the temp entrance, and then some of the early work, interior work that is either underway or completed.
What uh-oh.
Okay, so the previous view was from the backside of the courthouse from Harriman and Kearney. This is the portion of Harriman Street that's been closed down for the length of the project. This is a view from the southeast from Greenwood. You can see the new work that the city has completed with the crosswalks. One change is that the city's no longer requiring that we build a pedestrian walkway due to some of the changes that have happened on Greenwood. So folks will be crossing either here or here and then crossing again back to the south side of Greenwood and then over to Bond, and then they can come up the west side of Bond. And that's the current arrangement. And then here's the view of the crosswalk from Bond and Greenwood, another view there. And then a close-up there, site. So this is a sidewalk along Harriman that's open currently. There is actually a building here that a storefront that faces onto Harriman, whose address is on Harriman. So Wayne is coordinating, working closely with them and keeping them apprised of noisy work and potentially disruptive work. So we're trying to be as considerate as we can, given the fact there's a major construction project about 20 feet from their office space. Okay. See what we're seeing here. And sharing's a little tricky. I'm going to go to the next pictures here. I'm trying to. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's not really shared. Okay, so this is the temp entrance. So this is a view from inside the current breezeway between the two courthouses, looking out. This is as you step outside, looking at the security area. So this is the new security station that's been set up and is currently in use. And then here's the view, the public from Bond Street. We have the ramp here, steps, another view. And then as they come in to go through the screening area. So this seems to have turned out really well. The deputies are liking it, and there was a few days of regular visitors to the courthouse kind of figuring things out, but it seems like it's going pretty smoothly at this point.
Seem to be happy with it.
It's like I'm gonna have to stop sharing again in order to share the next pictures. So this is some of the site work, and this will take us to a couple items to bring up with the group. So this is inside that Harriman Street closure, looking at demo work that's currently underway. So one item we wanted to just highlight, bring up, not so much for discussion, but just to make everyone aware. These are the two existing dry wells that were installed in 2004. And what we found as they began to decommission them is that along the building foundation here, when these were installed, essentially they encroached on the support for the existing building footings. And so Ashley and Vance Engineering and the team, as well as some micropile consultants, engineering consultants, have been working to address the issue. Currently, the proposed solution, after vetting several others, is to need to install micropiles along here to support the building prior to continuing with the excavation. Eric and Wayne, you may be able to go into a little more detail.
Yeah, that's correct. So basically we looked at, like Lee said, a couple of different options, one being the micropiling at the existing footings of the 1977 building right there underneath that brick wall. The other option we looked at was cutting off the top of those dry wells, filling them with CDF, so because we didn't want to undermine those existing footings. And then, but part of that too, we would have to re-engineer, re-detail the new footings for the expansion building, which would also probably include micropiling. So we went through all the different options, and this seems to be the least expensive and the quickest option. Pence contractors are bringing on a specialty sub to do their own engineering on that. That'll be checked by Ashley Vance Engineering. But as soon as we get the green light on that, we'll start installing that micropiling and shoring underneath the 1977 building. That'll allow us to pull out the dry wells.
The expansion goes on top of these, does it not?
Correct.
So you are, these will be abandoned in some way.
Yeah, we have to decommission them and
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they're about 15 feet deep.
Okay.
And the issue that was known obviously all along, but the issue that kind of came up is that when they were installed, they over excavated to install them, and that unfortunately encroached on the support for the existing footings, which also is the support for the proposed new foundation.
Right.
Currently, the rough order of magnitude number that it's not exact, but it's kind of a starting point that we're working with is around $200,000 for the additional micropiles there.
The footings for that's, what is it, 77? You said 77 edition?
Right.
They're okay. I mean, the building is solid.
Yeah, Ashley Vance took a look at the existing conditions. It's all solid. So before we go any further, they just want to make sure we don't undermine it. And so we'll install those micropiles to allow us to continue with the removal of the dry wells and the new footings.
There's another view there to 2. So then moving on, this is the demo of the existing entrance. And that's kind of the majority of the site work. Obviously, there's some open area work, but those are kind of the highlights. Any other questions related to the site as I move on to the next slides? I just wanted to highlight some of the interior work that's been done. This is the second floor wall facing the construction area. So where my cursor is, that beyond that is above the existing lobby that's being demoed. And facing that direction roughly faces south toward the construction area. So this is one of the sound dampening walls that's been installed. Similar condition on the first floor. Again, this is where the old lobby was, where folks would come in to the main part of the courthouse. These are some additional fire doors that were installed as part of the early work package as a requirement from the city. This breezeway between the two buildings, first and second floor. And this is also where the new temp entrance, where folks come through to access the courthouse. And then moving to the basement, this goes to that first story area that's being demoed, and this has been closed off. There are 2 restrooms here that are still in use for the jury assembly room, which is directly to the left of the view of this picture. And then this is final, this will stay in place. This is the egress hallway through the basement. It has a detect alarm, so delayed egress alarm. In the event of emergency, folks can exit through here, but during normal operations, this would be staff only. There's a staff restroom here, and then the break room, the existing break room is off to the left here. Beyond this is file storage for the rest of the basement that is now enclosed. And then this is the last temp egress area. This actually exits through a conference room that Pence is using as a construction office. In the event of emergency, it could be used to exit the first floor, and then for people to exit out into that area of Harriman that's currently closed. At the end of construction, this will become a window. Going to exit and stop sharing. Couple of other items related to current status of the project, and then we'll revisit some of those challenges, and then we'll close with the upcoming milestones. In terms of current status, early work that's complete. You saw the temp entrance demo is about 30%. The new egress hallways and the separation walls are complete. In terms of permits that we've received to date, essentially everything except for the engineering permit, the INFR, and the building permit. Both are expected shortly. We're currently finalizing the agreement that as the owner of the county needs to sign with the city for the work that's in the right of way. That involves the 1-year warranty for the work and how that work is then turned over to the city for their control and maintenance. I think we're very close. Do you have an update on that, Kurt?
Yeah, so that's the
public facilities infrastructure agreement. The county reviewed and signed it, and it's now with the city to sign and record. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the building permit, well, related to the INFR, we'll touch, when we talk about challenges, we'll touch on the Bond Street water line. We've separated out the work on Bond Street related to potential water line work from the rest of the engineering permit in order to expedite issuing the engineering permit for the rest of the work in the right of way as we work through with the city and continue to review the impacts to the water line on Bond. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then, as we mentioned, the building permit, we'll be processing that payment over the next few days. And to our understanding, there's nothing remaining to keep that from being issued. So that's kind of the update on where we are at currently. Any questions on work that's going on or the status current work? Okay, so moving on to current challenges, I will share my screen and go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So in terms of current challenges, remaining permits, we just touched on, we talked about the existing dry wells, building footings, and then the Bond Street water line. So currently the water line already in its current existing condition encroaches, or to put that the opposite way, the current curb line already encroaches on the water line. And doesn't meet current city standards. So it's within the 10 feet space that current city standards allow for hardscape being constructed over the water line. So as things stand now, even if we were to leave the existing curb in place, which really isn't possible, we have an issue with that encroaching on the water line. As well as the planned improvements, I can go back to that, or if we were to go back to the rendering, you'd see the planned hardscape improvements along Bond Street. Those also would encroach in the same way on the water line. So we're currently working through a review of either changing the planned improvements or a design of replacing the water line on Bond Street, which is a significant cost, significant challenge to the project. So likely in November, we'll have more to report back on that. One of the things that would be involved is a design of that water line. It wasn't part of the original civil engineering design. So there's quite a few steps before we'll have more information and or pricing to share in terms of potential cost.
But Lee, when was that? It's that curb line on Bond Street that let's see, I'm looking at your picture. It's
right about in here, if you can see my cursor.
yeah. So when was that put in? The encroachment or the water line?
I don't know, Eric, or do you know the original construction of it?
I don't know when the water line was put in, but rather than running down the travel lanes, it's running under the parking stalls right outside the curb. So it's kind of in a dated spot. And it's also, what, a 4-inch line currently?
It's a 4-inch line, and if we proceed with this work, the city is asking us to upsize it to an 8-inch.
And also improve or replace the connections to buildings across the street, like for interstate.
Right? Yeah. Well, you're gonna have they want to not only upsize it, they want you to move it closer to the center of the street too, don't they?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. And that means whatever connections that somebody else has, like what is that that bank across the street? their connections and so forth, you're gonna have to reconnect all that.
Yep.
So is the city willing to, at least go half or put in some money to this improvement?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but
Okay, all right,
certainly a conversation we can have.
okay.
All
right.
So that's, in terms of current challenges, that's kind of the final one we wanted to share. Finally, upcoming milestones, obviously the building permit. We've been talking about that for a long time, but we keep getting closer, and in our view, all that's left is for us to process the payment. So we'll be likely speaking to the commissioners in a meeting next week in order to gain approval for that expenditure, and then we'll be able to move forward. The current amount due is around 800. This is for the building permit and SDC's 877,000. So that would release the building permit for us to. Also, then that will trigger the issue for a construction plan set. So we're likely have a few weeks for that to be incorporated. Then we would have review by Pence and the contractors and response with any cost impacts based on the final construction set in response to city permit and plan review comments. And then that will bring us to an updated schedule. So to sum up, there's some headwinds currently that we're facing, both on really in 4 areas. The permits, both in time delays and cost of the permits themselves, and some significant increases over our original estimates. The INFR, the engineering permit, one, getting the final permit for the work, all the work we need to do, and then working through the issues of the Bond Street water line, and as well as the existing dry wells. So those are some challenging headwinds that we're facing currently, that we don't have current updates in terms of cost and the final schedule impacts, but we'll know more over the next few weeks and then and beyond that. I'll just move through our presentation. This is the same timeline that we shared previously. The fall winter, obviously, with that construction administration, those final dates, we show that arrow moving forward past fall winter. Those are some of the final pieces of information that we'll have as we have a firm date and receipt of the building permit and schedule updates. So there's some impacts clearly to the schedule and completion date as well. And I will stop sharing. That's the extent of our presentation, and we'll open it up for discussion.
I have a question. When do you anticipate that you will have some budget numbers? Let's say estimates of the expected anticipated cost of the issues. I mean, and when will you have that? And can that be forwarded to us prior to the next meeting in November?
So the second question first. Yeah, I think that's what we would work on for the November meeting, is having a packet for the review, because in reality, it's going to be a couple months prior to having all of that information. We'll have pieces as we get closer, but that timing actually kind of fits with when we expect that final impacts.
So we'll be able to have it before the meeting?
Give you a chance to review it
that'd be great.
before we meet.
What we're trying to do is wrap up some of these, like the Bond Street water line, the dry wells, some of those types of changes in with Pence's review of the construction set, so we can have it all as kind of a lump sum. So they're working on the price.
And then changes to the time of completion, I guess,
Yeah,
as a result of the impact.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then that kind of moves us to the first part of your question. related to when we'll have those costs. I think that was your.
Well, I think is do we have an estimate of the amount? I guess the answer is no, not yet. And then the second question was, can we get those before the next meeting? You have a chance to review those.
And we have bits and pieces, but not the full picture. So for instance, on the water line, without a design, just a rough order of magnitude, that could be in the $600,000 range. With the micro piles, could be in the $200,000 range is what, just based on the number of piles and the cost we already have for the piles that were part of the plan. So it's really just.
Is that an increase or is that the anticipated cost?
Well, we weren't gonna have to do them before, so that's a complete
okay.
increase.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, there's a slew of smaller changes, that'll be captured in that, construction set of documents. And so those are the numbers that'll start coming in as subcontractors review those plans and we get requests for cost changes.
So once we get the building permit issued next week, hopefully, then there's the architect to take all the city comments and update their drawings with any changes that were requested by the city. That'll probably take 3 weeks or so. And then the general contractor Pence can send out that IFC set to all the subs. And then
Get some bids in.
get some bids in, and then also as part of that analysis would be what the schedule delay is going to, basically how it's going to affect each one of the subs.
That's great. And just one final comment, the LRS architects, they have been, as some of these changes from the city have become known, they've been working on this. So we're not waiting until the final set to make any changes. They've been making some changes and updating, but we won't have those final changes until the permit's released.
I have a question. I know you're only in the early work package, not in the building because of the permit issues, but how are the RFIs, all the APRs, any change orders? How is that going at a pace that you're comfortable with so far?
Yes, LRS is doing a great job responding to all the RFIs. Now the the responsibilities back over to Pence contractors, to pull the teeth from the, get all the information from the subs, so we can have some hard numbers and we can vet those out. They'll do that before they submit it to me. I'll review it, make sure I vet it out before I give it to Eric and Lee. But yeah, so far the process is being going pretty good.
That's great. It's always tricky in a addition and remodel. So just curious how it's going. Thanks.
What, this is a discussion we had back when you got the GMP from Pence. There's things like those dry wells. Now, the piling probably and the extent of whatever protection you need to do for the existing building, and that's one thing. But the dry wells were there, and you knew you had to do something with the dry wells. So to pay extra for that, I would push back a little bit on Pence on that stuff, and some of the other changes or modifications that really should fall within the GMP. They had, and I don't know what they are. Obviously, I'm not involved in what is going on with what's back and forth with the city or what you've discovered as you do the demo. But to just write a check to those guys just because they figure it's an extra is, to me is bloating. I've obviously, guys, I've been there, and no is a pretty good word.
Yeah, there's no extra cost for decommissioning and removing the dry wells. That's already covered in the GMP. What is going to be the added cost is the unforeseen that we just discovered from potholing next to the 1977 building and the added micropiles for pinning the existing foundation. So yeah, there are no cost for the dry wells. That's already covered.
Okay. The other thing is back to this business with the city. You guys have been, I'd have had a heart attack if I'd been dealing with these guys. This is ludicrous. And the thing is, so Bend School District is experiencing some of the same garbage from the city that you have experienced. And again, no, you want me to improve the water line and do some of this stuff, fine. We'll be glad to put it in our construction program, but you're paying the doggone price. We're not paying for it. And somebody needs to push back on these guys. These guys have cost you, well, Lee, I was sitting there listening. You rattled off about $1.5 million that you anticipate already that these guys have cost. And it's like I said, again, no is something that and I know there's politics involved in it, and the commissioners need to probably have some conversations with the mayor or with the city council, but somebody down there in the school district and in the county has got to do something about that building department.
And
You can't continue to go on like this, and just suck it up.
Yeah. I agree, Jerry, with your point about the challenges and the impact, not only to the project, but to the cost for the county. And we've been thinking carefully about how to approach this. And so the steps that we see over the next few weeks and month are, one, to gather better data and clear information on those costs, which we're still working with Pence to get. And then second, we'll be presenting this to the Board of Commissioners for a decision, and probably for either a recommendation or input at the very least from this committee, related to decisions related to that front facade and the improvements along Bond Street. So one is if how much of the proposed hardscape can we construct or not construct? Do we simply not put in some of those improvements and we end up with kind of less open access to the building in order to stay back from the existing water line? But our goal is to come up with 2 or 3 kind of clear, actionable options that we can present both to you all and then also to the board for a decision related to that water line and how Bond Street turns out. And one of those conversations that we can have with the city is about the construction of the water line and whose interest it is in. It's not just in the county interest, it's in it bears on a lot of other folks as well. So.
Right, and you're paying a bunch of SDCs for them, so say, okay, we'll use that money to improve your system. Okay, that's supposedly what SDCs are for. So anyway, I like I said, I it's just to me, and I'm not involved. I'm like I told Renee this morning, I'm supposed to be retired, so I'm supposed to be out of this business. But this really does what the city is doing, not only to the county but to the school district, is just absolutely unnecessary, and it should not be put up with, I guess, is my point. So and I don't know that I'll ever get off that, guys. So sorry, I'll apologize to you for my ranting.
Any other related questions on the courthouse? And then that's just one item for agenda number 4, item number 4, but anything else that you'd like us to shed light on or comment on related to the courthouse? Well, I'll just maybe close, Jerry, with my part and hand it back to you if that's, I just have a couple more items.
Okay, well, one thing to follow up a little bit on what Dan was asking you. I don't know where you are with your overall budget or where you guys are going to be or what you need to do, but I would imagine you're getting pretty thin on monies. I don't know what you're going to do you just talked about not doing some things that you'd plan to do, but how you're gonna deal with your budget overruns, and because I'm sure it sounds like you're approaching that point where you're gonna have some difficulties.
Yeah, and what we're trying to sort out is what are things that clearly may not be the best word, but what are things that are significantly and were very difficult to expect. Things like significantly higher. We felt we were carrying a really strong budget number for SDCs and permit fees, and those have come in significantly higher. The micro piles at the existing building footing, just the piles themselves, and then the bond water line, however that ends up playing out. Those three items in particular are things that would be difficult to account for in the current contingencies carried both on the construction contingency carried by Pence and the owner's contingency. Those contingencies total about 3.3 million. And this is very early in the project. And so I have regular conversations with our CFO about what options we may have if the total cost of the project outside the GMP and what we're currently carrying for contingency, if we're to need to recommend going beyond that total cost. We're looking at what options we may have. But it all really hinges on putting together these final numbers to be able to present that for you all to review, and then for the board, and have some decision points that can be addressed. Any other questions on the courthouse project? So just a couple final items. One, I do want to thank all of you. We really appreciate your participation, and this committee is very helpful for our capital improvement program and for the county. So thanks again for all of you that are here and participate. We really appreciate it. Secondly, I do apologize on the lateness of the notice for this meeting. I think we may not have had this scheduled until the last notice that you got. And so it was scheduled on our end, but I think it was an oversight and we didn't get that information out to you. So related to that, the next upcoming meetings would be for November and February. Basically, we're targeting meeting quarterly and targeting kind of mid-quarter for those meetings. It works well with other deadlines and meetings that we have going on that are regular standing quarterly meetings. So I'll work with Angie Powers, and you should see an email come out to set the dates of those meetings in November and February. And we'll look closely and try and avoid, regular dates for when folks might have vacation plans or things around holidays. But so there's that. We'll try to get that to you more quickly. On the email side, we've encountered some technical difficulties, so you all may have received an email information and the opportunity to set that up. I don't believe that's live yet, but we'll also try and follow up with the latest on what's going on with getting your email accounts to you. So those are the last two items that I had as far as housekeeping items, and I'll turn it back over to you, Jerry.
Well, one thing, Lee, I don't know about everybody else, but I think I certainly appreciate what you guys do for the county. I think you really stayed on top of this. This is I know you're in a very difficult position, believe me, partner. Been there and understand that it's right now it's not a whole lot of fun. So, but we appreciate the job you're doing. So. Has anybody got anything else before we adjourn?
I'll just second what you said, Jerry. I think this has been a great process, and I really appreciate being on this committee and appreciate all the work that's being done. And definitely it's a challenging project. I get that.
I echo that also. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, anything else, guys? All right, we're adjourned. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. maybe.
I'm trying to